A young woman, barely 27 years old, had everything ahead of her. A promising career, a reputation for brilliance, and a seat on the judge's bench. One of the youngest in the state of Florida. Sharp, driven, admired by colleagues. A rising star in the legal world. But behind the accolades and ambition was something else. Something hidden. Something no one saw coming. She wasn't just a judge. She wasn't just a daughter. And he wasn't just a father. They were husband and wife. And soon, everyone in their family would be dead. Cut to black. A single gunshot echoes in the distance. Then silence. What drives a person to cross every moral and legal boundary? Was it desperation? Was it greed? Or was it something far worse? The screen flickers back to life. Police sirens. Crime scene tape fluttering in the wind. A house soaked in tragedy. Tonight, we uncover a story so shocking that even seasoned investigators struggled to make sense of it. A judge who broke the very laws she swore to uphold. A father whose love defied every boundary. And a murder so cold, so calculated, it would leave an entire community in disbelief. This is the case of the 27-year-old Florida judge who married her own father and killed her entire family for his VA benefits. But the truth is even worse than you think. For most, life is a straight path. You grow up, you fall in love, you build a family, you make a name for yourself. And in the end, if you're lucky, you leave behind a legacy, a story others will tell long after you're gone. But for one woman, that path was something else entirely. Twisted, broken, corrupted in a way that would shake an entire community to its core. She wasn't just a judge. She wasn't just a daughter. She was something else. And by the time the truth came to light, it was already far too late. A promising young judge, a marriage that should have never happened, and a massacre that left an entire family dead. The question is, why? Was it love? Was it manipulation? Or was it something much, much worse? This is the case of the 27-year-old Florida judge who married her biological father and killed her entire family for his VA benefits. Her name was Judge Franklin Cordell. At 27 years old, she had already accomplished what many only dreamed of. A rising star in Florida's legal system. A woman known for her intellect, her ambition, and her unshakable presence in the courtroom. A judge with a promising future. But none of that would matter, because by the end of it all, she wouldn't be remembered for her career. She would be remembered for something else entirely. The crime? Unthinkable. She had done what no one could comprehend. She had married her own biological father. And then, just months later, she orchestrated the brutal murders of her entire family. Her mother, her stepfather, her siblings. All for one reason, investigators would claim, her father's VA benefits. But the real question wasn't just why she did it. It was how. How does a woman, an educated, accomplished judge, end up in a marriage that defies every moral, legal, and psychological boundary? How did she get away with it? And more importantly, what led to the moment where she decided that her own family had to die? Was this carefully planned? Cold? Calculated? A crime driven by greed? Or was this something else? A moment of passion? A mind unraveling under the weight of something no one else could see? The answers were buried beneath the bloodstains. And soon, the truth would come out. 911 dispatcher. 911, what's your emergency? A shaky inhale. A woman's voice whispering, trembling barely above a breath. The caller said, "They're dead, they're all dead." By the time authorities arrived, it was already over. The home on Street had once been filled with life. Family dinners, birthdays, whispered conversations between parents after the children had gone to bed. But on this night, it had become something else entirely. A crime scene, a tomb, a place where an entire family had been wiped out in a matter of minutes. Her name was Judge Franklin Cordell, and before the world knew her as a murderer, they knew her as a prodigy, a legal mind far beyond her years, a woman who should have had everything. But instead, she chose something else. She chose him. It was a marriage that never should have happened, a relationship that defied every law, every unspoken boundary. And yet it did happen. Legally, publicly, without consequence. At least, not at first. But as investigators would soon uncover, that wedding was only the beginning. Was it about money? Power? Something deeper? And perhaps the most disturbing question of all, was it always going to end this way? To understand how this happened, we have to go back to the beginning. Before the headlines. Before the courtroom. Before the bodies were counted, she was just a girl from Palmwick, Florida. Born in year, Judge Franklin Cordell was a daughter of mother's name and biological father's name. From an early age, she was exceptional, gifted in school, a voracious reader. By the time she reached high school, her path was already clear. She was going to be somebody, and she was going to do whatever it took to get there. She excelled in law school, earning top marks, gaining the attention of professors and mentors who saw her as a future leader in the field. She was sharp, ambitious, fearless, and at just 27, she earned a title that few her age could claim, judge. But what few knew was that her past had already begun to creep into her future. And one man would change everything. Biological father's name was a veteran of the United States military, a man who had served his country, who had once been a father to a young girl and then disappeared. For years he was absent, until he wasn't, until he found her again. And when he did, something happened, something that would set in motion a chain of events that no one could stop. The details of their reunion remain unclear, but what we do know is that it did not unfold like a normal father-daughter relationship. They became close, too close. By the time she reached adulthood, their connection had evolved into something else entirely. Legally, the marriage was valid, paperwork filed, a ceremony conducted, and despite the unthinkable nature of their relationship, it remained hidden until the murders. It was date. The house on street name was quiet. Inside, a family slept, unaware that their fate had already been decided. By morning, 4 bodies would be found, and only one person would walk away. It didn't take long for police to suspect her. The evidence was there, if you knew where to look. But perhaps the most damning evidence was her own words. Audio of her police interrogation. Her voice, steady, emotionless, unbothered. Then, the moment she slipped up, the moment investigators knew they had her, was it money? Manipulation? Or was there something even deeper at play? In the end, the truth was revealed. The case closed. But even now, the questions remain. How does someone with everything throw it all away? How does a story like this happen? And could it happen again? 911 dispatcher. 911, what's your emergency? The caller said, "They're gone, all of them, they're dead." The call cuts to static. The screen remains dark. Then, flashing police lights. A quiet Florida neighborhood, drenched in the blue and red glow of emergency vehicles. Officers moving through the scene, their expressions unreadable. Yellow tape stretched across a driveway. Neighbors watching from a distance, their faces frozen in silent horror. In the early hours of date, a family home in Palmwick, Florida, became something else entirely. A crime scene, a place where 4 lives were erased in a single night. A mother, a stepfather, 2 siblings, gone. And at the center of it all, a young woman who had spent her life upholding the law. Judge Franklin Cordell was one of Florida's youngest judges. Respected, intelligent, but there was something else about her. Something few knew. Something no one could have imagined. She wasn't just a judge. She wasn't just a daughter. And the man beside her in that photograph wasn't just her father. He was her husband. Pause. The weight of those words lingers. Then, the camera zooms in on a wedding certificate. The names, the date, legal, unchallenged. Then the image shifts. Crime scene photos, evidence markers, blood streak floors. A marriage that never should have happened. A crime no one could have predicted. And a motive that left investigators questioning everything they thought they knew. This is the case of the 27-year-old Florida judge who married her biological father and killed her entire family for his VA benefits. After discussing how the judge managed to legally marry her father, without raising alarms. How did this happen? How did no one notice? Do you think there were signs that everyone ignored? Let me know in the comments below. After detailing the crime scene and the brutal nature of the murders, was this planned from the start, or was it a moment of desperation? What do you think really happened that night? Leave your theories in the comments. Do you think the law failed in this case? Should there have been safeguards to prevent something like this? Vote in the poll above. Was she a mastermind, a victim of manipulation, or something else entirely? Share your thoughts below. It was a kind of town where doors were left unlocked, where neighbors exchanged polite waves across neatly trimmed lawns, a place where nothing truly unexpected ever happened. Until it did. For years, the house on the corner of Maple and 3rd blended seamlessly into the fabric of the neighborhood. A white picket fence, a freshly mowed lawn, holiday decorations placed just so. By all accounts, the family inside was just like any other. A loving husband, a devoted wife, 2 bright-eyed children. But if walls could talk, they would tell a different story. One that had been unfolding for months, piece by piece, in whispers and shadows. At first, the signs were subtle. A misshift at work. A neighbor swearing they heard something. Something off. In the middle of the night. A fleeting glimpse of unease in the wife's eyes when she thought no one was looking. None of it enough to raise alarm on its own. And yet, those who took a closer look couldn't shake the feeling that something about this picture-perfect family was off. Then came the night that changed everything. By the time the first officer arrived, the street was eerily still. No shouting, no commotion. Just a single porch light flickering against the darkness. The front door unlocked. Inside, a silence so deep it felt unnatural. And then, a single detail that stopped the officer cold. A detail so small, so seemingly insignificant. Yet would unravel everything. What investigators uncovered next sent shockwaves far beyond this quiet town. The truth was far worse than anyone could have imagined. From the outside, they were everything a family was supposed to be. A loving father, a devoted mother, 2 children who seemed to have the world ahead of them. Their lives captured in smiling photographs, holiday cards, school recitals. The kind of family you'd pass in the grocery store, without a second thought. The kind that made you believe, if only for a moment, that good things last. But photographs don't tell the whole story. If you looked closely, really closely, you'd see it. A tension just beneath the surface. A smile that didn't quite reach the eyes. The way the mother's fingers tensed when her husband placed a hand on her shoulder. The way the children flinched at sudden noises. Their laughter a little too rehearsed. No one thought much of it at the time. Then, one night, it all came apart. She told them everything. What they'd never seen. What she had kept buried for years. The truth about the man she had once loved. The man who had sworn to protect her. The man who had turned their home into something else entirely. And yet, this story does not begin with him. To understand what happened inside that house, we have to go back further. Decades, even. Back to a childhood shaped by secrets. Back to a courtroom where justice was meant to be blind, but wasn't. She was such a kind soul. She deserved so much more. What she endured would shock even the most seasoned investigators. And what the judge did next left them questioning everything they thought they knew about justice, power, and the human mind itself. It had taken years to reach this moment. Countless hours of investigation. Testimonies that left jurors shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Details so disturbing that even the most hardened detectives admitted they would never forget them. The evidence was overwhelming. The truth undeniable. And yet, as the verdict was read aloud, a hush fell over the courtroom. Some say justice was served that day. Others aren't so sure. For the victims, no sentence could undo what had been done. No number of years behind bars could erase the scars. Physical, emotional, generational. Outside the courthouse, reporters scrambled to capture the reaction. Some wept, some cheered, and some stood in stunned silence, unable to process the reality of what had unfolded in their own backyard. The community is still reeling from the shocking details revealed in this case. But beyond the headlines, beyond the outrage, one question remains. How did it come to this? Could anyone, have stopped it before it was too late? And then there is her. Where is she now? In a facility miles from the place she once called home, serving her time. But to this day, those who have spoken with her say one thing is clear. She doesn't believe she did anything wrong. Was she a victim, shaped by circumstances beyond her control? Or was she something else entirely? What do you think? If you found this case as shocking as we did, don't forget to like and subscribe for more cases that will make you question everything. And if you think this story was unsettling, just wait until you hear what's coming next week. Because some stories, they don't just haunt the past, they haunt the present.